Hello, if you're here for a review and a recommendation on this game, well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be very hard to, say that. It's hard to even describe this game in some actuality, and I'm going to be fairly honest, when it comes to my personal view and my personal perspective on this game, I think it's great. I think it's a great time if you're someone who enjoys the art style and the music. You're basically looking at the entire game. But this has dived a bigger discussion and debate on the entire issue of this game, and it's the difference between the presentation and the actual gameplay. I feel like there should be a difference between the presentation side of the game and the actual game. For many people who rave and love the game, it's because they love the art style and music. For those who are saying the game is flawed, they're mainly talking about the gameplay side. As for the gameplay, it's incredibly static. Does that mean it's bad? Well, not really. It's because every game before that got praised when the NES was the only thing on the market. It's perfectly fine for most. And if you don't like it, that means that you enjoy other games that are much more better in gameplay than this. And you might not really care about the presentation in general. That's perfectly fine. Or you are factoring both gameplay and the presentation and saying what is flawed. And I kind of understand that. It's perfectly fine to make a critique on a game and say, well, I need to sit down both the presentation side with the music and the art style and the gameplay side of things. For many games, you're going to either have a game where it is completely static in its overall ideas, but it has a great amount of presentation. And this is one of those examples. To me, this is a novelty game, and that's really the only purpose I can see it as. Only to really show the art style and the music. The gameplay is somewhat flatter than other games. But do we consider that a bad game? Or bad gameplay? I'm really torn on making a definitive answer to that entire question. I need you to tell me what you think, because when it comes to this game, do we have to critique that it's a bad game because it doesn't even fulfill out, well, what we would want for an improved game? Or do we also need to consider that this is a game where it's incredibly simple what to do and what to go by? I'm someone who, whenever looking at games, I have to make sure, hey, is this really good in presentation, and is this also good in gameplay? I feel that there should be a major difference between these, and sometimes there's going to be many people who will say, this is a bad game because it just does not follow what I want in a game. Well, that's the weirdest thing. When you look at Steam reviews and see that so many people have given a negative review because they say that there's not a good amount of gameplay excellency, it has really bad RNG, and most of the weapons are pretty, sort of one-sided and don't really do anything generally that are interesting, and there's only going to be around a few abilities or skills that you'll need throughout the entire game that you're gonna just have that as mandatory. Well, then it's just interesting, because we also need to understand that. Do we have to diminish this game's quality in some way because it does a few missteps in its own gameplay side? And that's what I would really want to go over. That's the only thing I can really think of, to be honest. And it's perfectly fine if you're someone who dislikes games that do this. It's great. It's nothing that I find can be anyhow criticized. It's just easy to go through, and I don't think anybody is going to hate you for saying that this game is flawed in some ways, except a lot of people. A lot of people are going to say you are diminishing the quality of this game because for some odd reason you are saying the gameplay is bad. Well, that shouldn't be a thing. It's a good game because it has great presentation. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to video games. Well, it depends. Do you really know what you're talking about, or are you just having different priorities? That's the thing about a lot of critics, is that they really don't know what they're saying or don't know what they're trying to make out to be, because a lot of people have their own preference, their own bias, and that's perfectly fine. For me, I would recommend this game to anyone because it's something that a lot of people in America will genuinely relate to when it comes to cartoons from Disney. And does that mean that the game is incredibly hardcore difficult? Yeah. But does that mean that the game is horrible because it's hardcore difficult? Well, no. It really, that's a bad argument, but many people have made it or many people have trolled it. I don't know either way. But it's interesting to me. I'm someone who will never really get the understanding sort of side of games when it comes to critics saying what they think and not really implementing their own priorities list for people, because some people sort of just don't do that and they genuinely don't have good logistical reasons other than it's bad. Get used to it, I guess. And that's perfectly fine. Anyways, this is just a video I wanted to talk about Cuphead. Cuphead's probably going to lose a lot of traction afterwards. And then when it comes to that, really, nobody's going to notice it or talk about it anymore because the game is very short. It's not really a very fun game for many people who are going to just start it out, not knowing how to play video games. And it's kind of just been overdone by now. It's good to see a game get this much praise, and I really think it deserves all of that praise. But then we also need to consider other games, and, well, many people who review these games just sort of put it down and say, oh, I like this game, and then they're done. The people who stream it then say, oh, I streamed this game, I liked it, they don't go further. We all just look at it, and then we're done. That's a lot of the public. So it's perfectly fine, and that's really it. That's really all I wanted to say about Cuphead. The only question I have is that even though the gameplay is flawed, does that make it a bad game, or does that make it bad gameplay? I would really want to see what you think about that. So, bye.
Now watch the difference when we remember the order and follow the right sequence. Here's your change. First, I get the drink.